right, so here we go. All right, my recorders are going. Welcome to a one-on-one interview. This is for Windy City Times, and nice to meet you, JP.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, so you're in LA? Are you in California?
Uh-huh. Well, Long Beach specifically, but yeah, uh-huh.
Okay. All right. First, tell me your pronouns, identity, and all that.
Sure. So JP Karliak, pronouns are he, him, though I do identify as queer and genderqueer.
Very good. Okay. And let's see. And you're married. I saw that.
I am. What?
Congrats on that.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And so where are you from originally? Are you always California?
No, I'm originally from Dunmore, Pennsylvania, which is a tiny town right next to Scranton. Yes, The Office. Yes, I've watched it.
Yeah. How'd you wind up in LA? Was it because of work or?
So I went to college in DC. I went to the Catholic University of America for 2 years. Enough said. And then I transferred to USC, fight on, for the rest. And I stayed. So I've been here for 23 years.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Mhm.
Have you ever been to Chicago?
I have some friends that live out there. As a matter of fact, we're coming out in May to see The Death Becomes Her out of towner, and we cannot wait.
Oh my God. I'll look for you at the premiere. I'll just see the blue hair across the room and I will run over and say
That's
hi.
how people always spot me at conventions, is like blue hair, blue hair. Bingo, there he is.
Well, I wondered if you were into musicals. I saw you singing some online, and did you like musicals growing up?
For sure. I mean, in high school, I was in Bye Bye Birdie and 42nd Street. I was in Into the Woods in a regional production and The Wizard of Oz. But I just didn't have the. I loved doing it as just a fun thing. It was never something that I felt that I had the I'm going to say chutzpah or or the talent to be able to really like pound the pavement and pursue. But my husband is a what was once a Broadway actor. He was in the original cast of Book of Mormon. So there is musical theater in this house all the time.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and so how did your journey with the voiceover work? How did that get started?
Sure. So I had sort of I'm from a small town, so I'm a little sheltered. But when I was of the age that I started thinking about, oh, I'm going one day I will need a job. It was the same year that Aladdin came out, and I watched Aladdin and I saw Robin Williams do his thing, and I was like, wow, I want to do what he's doing. So he's a famous actor in Hollywood. Therefore, I need to become a famous actor in Hollywood, and then they'll let me do voiceover because I was just like, it seems too fun to be an actual job. And I hung on to that sort of conception all the way into college, thinking, okay, I'm gonna study to become an on-camera actor and make that my thing.
Mhm.
Hence moving to LA because doing on camera. And luckily, somebody disabused me of the notion that no, you can just work in voiceover. It's okay. Um, I One of my professors was Kelly Ward, who is a musical theater teacher, but also directed animation. He's best known for being in the first Grease movie. And he was the one who put me on the path of finding people to study with, including Bob Bergen, who was he's the original Porky Pig. He became my mentor, and the rest is history. And I just
That's
started doing it.
simple. When did you get a home studio? Was that a
So
process?
I've had this thing for a while. I lived in Glendale, if you know LA at all, which was a good distance from my agent. So it was an easy way to audition. But up until the pandemic, all this had in it was just a little mic and an iPad, and now there's a whole thing in there. Because once all that happened, I just started working from home.
Excellent. And so for this particular project for the X-Men, did you record it there or did you go to a somewhere?
Right here.
Yeah. Okay.
I
So,
mean, and that's what's been so cool about getting to like did the premiere last night, which was so much fun.
mm,
I haven't met the cast in person at all yet. So it was so nice to actually like get all together and take pictures and, just get to know who's playing what.
okay. How cool is that? Was it weird to like hear their voices and then see them or no?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some of the people that half of the cast is the original cast from the 90s,
Okay.
who most of them live in Canada, so I've never met them before. So it was really cool to, I mean, I watched the show as a kid, so it was neat to see them. And then also a lot of the newer cast, I know them, so it's always nice to just get together with, with our work colleagues, especially because most of the time we just spend time alone in this padded room.
Uh-huh. Were you a comic reader in the past? Did you like comics or no?
I didn't get into comics until later. I was a big fan of comic book movies as a kid. I mean, I have vivid memories of going to see the 1989 Batman and then Batman the animated series and the X-Men movie franchise and all of that. I was obsessed. And
Mhm.
so I sort of back-ended into comics where I would watch a movie and be like, well, wait, what's the lore? What's the history of this character? And then deep dive on, YouTube or Wikipedia or something to find out more.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I read some comics now, but it's sort of like come full circle the reverse way as opposed to comics then movies.
Mhm. Did have you done comic conventions yet, or is that something that you're gonna do?
I did a little bit. When I was in Looney Tunes as Wile E. Coyote, I did New York Comic Con. I've been to Comic Con plenty of times and I've done some panels, but that was the first time that I really did like a show-based panel and signing and all of that. So I think I'll do a little bit of that, especially if the rest of the cast is game and we can do it all together, because that's always fun.
Well, let me tell you, you can do it forever and you can make a lot of money. My old roommate from school is Michael Rosenbaum, who was in Smallville.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so he does them and they're exhausting, but it's a great hustle. It's really great. And you can meet a lot of fans, so it's fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely getting some of that advice from the older cast last night about, hey, are you guys doing cons?
Right, right, right. What about action figures? Look what I have.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I love that outfit. I love that
I
outfit.
know, it's so cool.
So, I do have some action figures. When I was growing up, my very first show that I loved was He-Man, so I had every single one until my mother made me get rid of them, which she's terrible. But the current action figures that I hold, so a lot of the characters that I've played over the years have been legacy characters, from Wile E. Coyote, Boss Baby, Tin Man, Willy Wonka, and now Morph. So my thing is every time I play a legacy character, I get the Funko Pop figure that
Okay.
corresponds. So
Mhm.
I've got a see that
You got
right up
some
here.
Funko.
That's
Yeah.
the little wall of them. Yeah.
How did you hear about this character? It was an agent kind of thing, or how did you
Yeah, just a regular audition. I mean, I knew from when I read about it that I was like, oh, this is important, this is impactful, especially because he is non-binary and that was part of it from the get-go. And I was very excited about that. And especially when I watched back the trajectory of the character from the old series. I mean, Morph Morph was a really tragic character. He was victimized by Mr. Sinister, and he was mind controlled, and he betrayed his friends, and there was just all of this trauma surrounding him. Yet he masked so much of it with humor and positivity. And I was like, well, what queer person can identify with masking trauma with funny? So
Mhm.
um, I just gravitated to him very quickly. But it was just an audition, sent it in, got a call back, and all from right here. So yeah.
Excellent. So Morph was killed off in the comics, or it was really used as a plot device. That character was to cover up they killed off somebody. It was a trick, right? Basically. Are you worried about Morph getting, killed sometime?
Getting fridged.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's always the possibility. You never know. I mean, the original X-Men series certainly didn't pull punches, and I mean, Morph was killed once for a season and a half, until he came back.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh, that's
so I don't know.
yeah, we'll see. Huh.
We'll have to wait and see.
I mean, but very popular character. Like people love this character. How do you are you avoiding social media with some of the talk? There's a lot of chatter about Morph in particular, more than any other character on this show.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, good. You've been shielded well because some of it's not good. They're just
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, somebody labeled me a radical queer activist, and I'm like, yeah.
okay. I got it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
no, it doesn't really bother me. There was one article I read that was, just really inflammatory, but everything they said from he's playing this character who's non-binary, he founded this nonprofit organization that helps queer people get into voiceover. And I was like, facts, facts, all true, great journalism.
right,
So, there's nothing that I feel really offended about because it's like I don't take offense to you saying what's true. That's what I'm doing. You might
right.
have a different perspective about whether it's good or not, but you
Hmm.
know, I'm an advocate for equal representation and diverse casting. So
Yeah,
no
it's
apologies.
strange. It's strange that people can't get past some of these, some of these characters were created a long time ago, things have changed, and they just can't seem to get past the idea of it, right? They can't, a black Little Mermaid, no, like it's this kind of weird thinking on a fictional. It's not like you're portraying somebody real, you know?
Right. And also, Morph's a shapeshifter. Like, why
Hmm.
wouldn't he identify as non-binary? There's so many head scratching components of this, but hey, whatever. So much of this is I'm not I don't do roles like this for the masses where I want 100% of people to buy into it. It's more about like, are there queer people, young or old, who watch this and are like, I see myself, I feel my experience in this. I see a superhero that represents me and makes me feel better about myself. I've done my job. I don't need everybody to love him. But he is
Oh,
pretty funny, so I'm hoping they do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I like how you're focusing on the positive. There's the other side where people are looking to see themselves in a cartoon. So,
Hmm.
Nimona was a start. Now we got some more. Um, all right. So what about was there any talk on pronouns throughout the season? Anything about that? That's not mentioned. Okay.
Not really. And I think, well, for two reasons. One, I mean, it takes place in the 90s, and we didn't really have the mainstream vocabulary of non binary or they, them back then.
Mhm.
And also for myself, I mean, I started identifying as genderqueer like so many people who during the pandemic actually had a time to breathe, sit down with themselves and be like, hey, I think there's something about my identity that I haven't been thinking about.
Mm.
And when I learned about the terminology of non-binary and genderqueer, I was like, oh yeah, that's me. Yes, that. But as somebody in their 40s who's sort of worn he, him as like an old sweatshirt that you're just really comfortable with, I never felt comfy switching. I was sort of like, I don't think he, him is perfect, but I'm comfy in it. So, eh, I don't feel the need to change it.
Mhm.
And similarly for Morph, I mean, regardless of whether we see Morph in 1997 or 2017, I think there's an element of Morph that will, might have that comfortability in the pronouns that he's had all his life, or he might change. And either way is okay.
Very good. I love that. Okay. So you got a video game project coming up too. So
Oh,
how
that little thing?
yeah, what's the difference between, cartoons and a video game for voice work?
Spreadsheets.
What is it?
Spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets.
Let me explain.
Okay.
So when we do animated projects, we get a script. We get an actual script that we read. Usually read in advance, and then record the day. Video games, we usually don't get in advance, and it's all lines in a spreadsheet because there's so many dialogue trees and options for when we say different things. So it's really so much about that relationship with the director, it giving you context of like, okay, so you're the Joker. You just blew up a bank. You're laughing hysterically at the cops, So, and that's what this line means, So there's all of that context that comes in every time. But other than that, it's pretty similar performance-wise. Especially the difference between doing an action show like X-Men and then doing an action video game like Suicide Squad. There's still a lot of adrenaline efforts, stuff going on.
Okay. What do you have so you've done Looney Tunes, your resume is amazing, first of all. um, do you have one that you're particularly proud of? Is there one what's the most proud? Is there one character that you just really would like to be remembered for, maybe?
Um, this is going to sound like I'm sucking up somehow, but it's kind of Morph.
Okay.
And mostly because I've played queer-coded characters before, sure. I mean, if you've seen Dante Crescendo in Trollstopia, I mean, he's the queerest. But, you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
it was never said, it was never overt. And I think that Morph's identity is said, at least, in press releases and stuff like that. It's we don't mention it in the show, but it's we know that he is non-binary, and we know that that's that character. And the fact that I get to take that identity into this and share this with the world, that's huge to me. That's always been the goal. So
Right.
I'm
Oh my
picking
gosh.
him.
It's a great answer because I want to tune in and I want to see how you do. So you have Queer Vox. Tell me about, helping the LGBT community with this, and what advice do you give to people starting out?
Um, So yeah, QueerVox is it's a nonprofit organization I started in 2021. It's a academy and community for LGBTQIA plus voice actors. Started out as just a class to offer training, but we've also done some industry advocacy to talk about authentic casting and ways to write a casting breakdown that are appropriate, and and also thinking outside the box of what kind of casting you want. And as far as what we share with our students, I'd say the biggest one, especially for our gender nonconforming students, or
Mhm.
even or queer students in general, is to think about their career, especially the voices they can do, in terms of a sandbox. And there's that center point of the sandbox that you're playing in, that is the overlap of the voices that you love to do, and also the voices that stereotypically an audience or casting would hear your voice and perceive you as, like, oh, that's something you can play. I.e., that's your moneymaker. That overlap right there is your moneymaker. Then there's the outside corners of that sandbox that include the roles that maybe casting or an audience might not hear you as, but it's really gender euphoric if you could get to play that. Like maybe somebody who has an effeminate voice that doesn't think that they could play Superman, but would really love to one day. You know, I tell them, still ask your representation or still submit yourselves for those roles, because you might not get it every time. But if you keep putting yourself forward, there might be that one time where it just clicks the right way, where it's like, yeah, actually, that is a good sound for, blank superhero. And then also, there's the roles outside your sandbox where no matter how much people might think you sound like a particular thing, you just don't want to play them. And being really clear about what that is. And I feel like when people have that understanding of that delineation of those roles, they're able to communicate to their agents, to casting, to any industry professional, especially people who might be cis or straight and not be really off book on the terminology and be a little like, oh, I don't know how to deal with this. When you have that awareness of yourself and what you can do, they're like, oh, easy. I know exactly how to market you. Cool. Let's move forward.
Right.
So I think that's so key.
Yeah, that's great advice. Even like looking for jobs out anywhere, people have imposter syndrome and they worry they're not good enough for something. And so, just go out there and try it, right? I mean,
Yeah, because it's that overlap of simultaneously being realistic, of knowing what your capabilities are and
mm,
what people are going to expect from you, while also not just tamping down all of the things that you really want to do that might strike every once in a while.
very good.
Yeah.
What's been the most challenging voice work that you've had to do? Maybe like the most takes you've had to do, or have you had one that was just really
I
challenging?
think the hardest character that I've played, but certainly one of my absolute favorites, is Boss Baby.
Uh-huh.
And that's because the voice of Boss Baby, it's a gravelly voice, so it's a bit of a grinder. I would always have a big steaming cup of tea, like when I would record him.
Mhm.
And also he was so there was he was, I'm not going to say he was overwritten, but he said so many things. It was like an episode of the Gilmore Girls. He just dialogue just poured out of his mouth. And for a show that was aimed at what, 5 to 8 year olds, like it was an inordinate amount of dialogue and so many complex words. I think I spoke Japanese in one episode too, because he was a very cultured and sophisticated businessman. So he had to say all these things. So those were I would come out of those sessions being like, okay, I'm gonna rest now.
That brings up the question, what do you do if it's another language? How do you get advice?
Um, well, usually, and in this case they did. They provided me like a pronunciation guide and, all of the things to make sure I was saying, and it was like one line. It wasn't, chunks. But I mean, if let's say an accent came along, because I don't think anybody would have me speaking whole things in another language, but
Uh-huh.
if an accent came along that was important to a character, oh, absolutely, getting a coach, because
Mm.
authenticity is the name of the game this day, these days, as well it should be, and you really want to do right by a culture and making sure that you're portraying that correctly, as opposed to just sort of like, as I say, doing sort of a like, a French chef sort of thing and being like, oh, it sounds fine, like that doesn't cut it.
Right. That's good. So where can people find out more about QueerVox or, your work? Where can they go for that?
Sure. Uh, QueerVox is at queervox.org, or you can follow us on Instagram at QueerVox Academy. And as for me, you can find me at jpkarliak.com or at jpkarliak on Instagram.
Well, excellent. I've learned a lot. I've had fun. You were just a great interview, and I'm excited to see what happens on March 20th, when it debuts.
Oh, just from what I saw last night, you are not ready.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much for your time and for the interview. And this has been such a treat. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jerry. It's been a pleasure.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.